did you get into birding?
I mean, seriously birding in college, but before I was always into birds when I was a kid.
My parents are kind of casual birders. I always had a pair of binoculars, but really didn't get into till about 2013. Okay, so we'll record our sightings on an app run by Cornell University called eBird. You can set up a free profile and you record all your data, and every time you go out birding, you send it up to their website. And what they get out of it is just hordes of scientific data from around the country, really around the world, that they can analyze for trends and scientific purposes. And as birders, what we get out of it is this repository for all our data, and we can look at different lists and statistics of what we've seen and when, and it's really useful as a user. It's a nice way to keep track of stuff. So we started up, and as we see different birds, we'll just kind of check them off and put the quantities. If something rare pops up, we'll have to put in some notes to kind of justify what we're seeing. And then at the end, we'll just close it out and submit it. So it's a really nice app. Andy Paulios works for the DNR, former, statewide bird coordinator?
Former statewide bird nerd.
Bird nerd, yeah. So Andy knows a lot more than me, but we'll walk around and see what birds we can find this morning. The migration weather hasn't been real good the last few days, so it might be slim pickings as far as migrant birds that are coming through that aren't here in the winter. I hear a lot of resident birds right now, blue jays and cardinals and robins, but we'll see what we can find.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the actual migrant yet.
No, this is how yesterday morning was too. Yesterday I didn't hear anything that wouldn't have been here like April 25th or something.
It was like a Lincoln sparrow or something.
Oh.
The elusive robin.
Yes, we have a robin on the path. Just ahead of that, a bright red northern cardinal, male. The little doo-doo we can hear is a black-capped chickadee. And these,
cheeseburger.
Yeah, for the most part, these are all migrants. The robins do migrate a little bit, although a fair amount do actually stick around in the winter.
Palm warbler.
So we're hearing a little buzzy of a palm warbler, which is a migrant. They migrate not too much further than like the southern U.S. in the winter. Sounds like it's up ahead in the orchard somewhere. It's a little yellow colored warbler, and it's one unique characteristic. It's the only, warbler is a very small bird, about 5 inches long. It's the only one that kind of pumps its tail. So if you see that, well, as you're looking through, a bunch of birds, that's really definitive just to be a palm warbler. This habitat is really nice actually with all these oak trees. If the weather had cooperated a little more, it might be just full of little migrant birds picking at bugs that get caught up in the oak trees before they bloom out. I don't know if technically they're the very last tree to bloom, or to leaf out, but they're one of the last, and that helps attract the birds as they come through. Once the leaves are out on trees, there's just not as many, they don't seem to attract as many bugs, and that's really what a lot of the birds are looking for. So
the bugs like the flowers.
Flowers, yeah.
And the birds like the bugs, so.
There's?
Is there something?
Might be in that crab or apple tree.
You usually get pretty close to these guys. Get one bird on video.
A lot of birding is actually listening, especially as you get more experience, it's listening for the songs or the calls that the birds are making, trying to figure out the direction they're coming from. And then, you know, trying to get close enough to get a good look or a picture. Sounds like it's right above us here.
He's right up.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to try and pick it up, but he's at about the 2 o'clock position, but only in the mid-story of this big tree here. And there he goes. He just flew over to the oak, and you can just kind of make out his tail pumping a little bit. I'll see if I can get a picture, but it's pretty gray up there. Yeah, right now it just kind of looks like a silhouette, not much of a photo, but we'll see if the lighting conditions improve or if the birds get on the other side of the sun, they won't be as backlit. Here's our chickadees that have been whistling as we've been walking up. Looks like we got 3 of them. They're here all year long. They actually start singing first couple sunny days in February, right? Maybe late January even. They're one of the first birds to start singing in our area.
What are those ones that just...
Yeah, we're hearing blue jays kind of making some loud, raucous sounds in the woods. I always think, like, if you hear something loud or just strange sounds in the wood, it's usually a blue jay. They whistle and mimic other birds. They do like small version of red-tailed hawk screams and stuff like that. So if you hear something that's really unusual and you can't figure it out, more times than not, it's a blue jay or a group of blue jays.
A lot of the blue jays that you see in early May are actually migrants, and they're going to Canada.
They winter down in like Mississippi, like the pines, kind of down there.
Mid-U.S. and down, yeah. And if you sit on like the tip of Dorset County in early May, you can see like thousands a day go past. It's just weird. You don't think of blue jays as like a big migrant.
Right.
And they're a daytime migrant. Like a hawk. Or a pelican or something.
Is it more common for birds to migrate at night?
The little guys. Yeah, all these warblers and tanagers and thrushes and hummingbirds actually migrate at night.
Less predators out then, or?
Well, some of that, and then there's a lot less turbulence in the air at night because you don't have all the atmospheric lift and thermals from the daytime sun. So if you're a little tiny warbler that weighs a few grams, ounces, it's a lot easier, less energetically taxing.
It's all about the calories, right? It's
we're all about calories.
They can get while they're here, you know, at their different stopovers, which is why food sources and habitat's very important. They got to load up on mostly bugs. Some do seeds or a mix, but
a little bit of berries in the fall, but yeah. Some of those, some of these small migrants have to go across like the Caribbean, you know, overnight from like Cuba to Florida or, you know, the Bahamas to, you know, Alabama or something. So any little headwind or change in weather can...
It's an all or nothing proposition. They got to make it. They can't rest on the water. Yeah, some mornings you'll get out this time of year and it'll just be a cornucopia of sounds and you'll hear the usual stuff like this, and then you're trying to pick out all these migrant songbird songs and calls and just trying to sort out really what's around and then start looking with binoculars to see things. This morning it's really just dominated by the local resident birds. We must not have had a lot of birds fly in overnight.
Do you come out mornings with a certain bird you want to find in mind, or?
It's a mix. I mean, this time of year from, I'd say, late April through mid to late May, there are just every day is like Christmas if you're a birder. Every morning you're just out there, and there's so many possibilities with all the data sharing with the apps and Facebook groups even and stuff like that. Sometimes there'll be a specific, what you'll call a target bird, that you go to a place to look for that's maybe been seen recently, or maybe you just have experience seeing that bird year after year in a certain type of habitat, or it's a real odd bird that comes back, year over year. So to answer your question, yes, there are definitely some days where you're going out looking for a specific bird. A lot depends on habitat choices though, like where you go hiking, woods, prairie. If you go to a wetland environment, that can also really determine the types of birds you're going to see there, or you're most likely to see. So a lot of great birding habitat really revolves around edges. Just like all wildlife, you're just more likely to see stuff on edges than you are buried deep in a woods. So an edge like this, where you've got grassland or prairie behind it, and you get these nice looks at trees, that's usually a good spot where you can find things. That's kind of what we were hoping this morning. Now the wind's working against us here. It seems like it's coming from the east across the prairie, and birds do not like wind for the most part. Makes it harder to catch the little bugs. I think it saps some energy out of them. So I suspect as we walk this way, we might not find too much. On the other hand, if we circle around to the other side on the road where the forest is kind of blocking the wind, that might be more likely to have birds. They'll just kind of slowly work their way over to an area that's less windy.
Maybe that.
Or go up at that edge up there.
The back.
Yeah, we can try that.
It's more sheltered.
Okay.
There's no sun either. Like sometimes in the morning, being in the sunny edges.
Yeah, the sun will start to activate the bugs, and as the bugs get going, the birds start to show up. So almost ideal conditions, well, besides no wind, would be, an east-facing. Andy taught me this when I was a beginning birder. You want an east-facing edge like this. The sun's coming out, kind of warming everything up, and then you'd want the wind coming from the opposite direction, so it's kind of blocked off. Yeah, we can mosey there just for a minute.
Common yellowthroat over here, which is a little warbler. He says witchity witch. And then the little bouncing ping pong balls. He gets faster and faster. That's a field sparrow.
Both migrant birds. So here's a birding fun fact. I learned a couple years ago. Andy mentioned common yellowthroat right there was singing. The common word in that bird's name does not really define abundance. It defines that it's common to the old world and the new world. So this type of bird apparently you can find in ranges that cover Europe or Asia, as well as America and the New World. And a lot of birds have that as part of their bird name: common merganser, common goldeneye.
It's a cowbird.
Yep. So that sputtering call that we just picked up, that's a brown-headed cowbird. A migrant bird. There's not many here in the winter, maybe just a couple hanging around some farms or something, but they are I guess what we call a nest predator. I don't know if that's the right term, Andy, but they, like cuckoos, like to drop their eggs in other birds' nests. Nest parasite, thank you. So once they're ready and their eggs are fertilized, they'll actually deposit them in any nest they can pretty much find. A red-winged blackbird. I've seen small little warblers that have babies, and they're feeding the babies, and then this one baby is 4 times as big, and that's a brown-headed cowbird. And that can be actually very taxing on the adult birds to try and find enough food to get something like that. So oftentimes when a brown-headed cowbird puts a egg in somebody else's nest, it can be, it can have bad effects on the rest of the brood and the parents.
So the brown-headed gobbler leaves.
Yeah.
The other bird raise it.
Correct.
Does the other bird know that it's not its kin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like my observations are no, like it's just another bird in the brood and they're trying to feed it, and you know, mom loves all her babies the same. So just my unscientific observation, I guess, the few times I've seen it. Hensel's, yeah, I was just gonna say, right out there. So this will be very hard to pick up on the video, but we just heard a little like slick, slick, and that's a call of a Henslow's sparrow. It's from a family of sparrows that really like to hide under the prairie grasses. When the prairie, a couple of years after it gets burned, it'll get kind of really matted down and have some areas, and it's a ground nesting sparrow. So they'll walk under this kind of matted prairie and they'll build their nests underneath her, and they very rarely come up and perch. Usually, well, if any time, it would be about now, either at dusk or dawn, to kind of get up on the stems and call. Okay, so as we're going here, now I'm going to catch up on some of the birds we've seen, put them in the app. Heard some woodpeckers, and when you record birds in the app, it's completely fair game, accepted and encouraged. If you only hear a bird but you're certain of its identity, it's fine to put it down as, you know, something you record for your checklist. You don't have to visually confirm everything. Many bird songs and bird calls are unique, you know, diagnostic to specific species. Like that, again, Andy described the pouncing or the bouncing ping pong ball, kind of crescendo. That's diagnostic for field sparrow, and there's a couple out here on the prairie hopping around.
Is that it right there?
Yep. There's also bird apps. You can, some are free, some you purchase. This is the Sibley app by the bird illustrator and field guide author David Sibley. So you can look up, if you suspect you're hearing something, you can, or see something, you can maybe take a guess at it, look up. So the field sparrow, you can play the song. And that's that ping pong ball kind of song we're hearing out in the field. And then you have some idea of what to look for. This particular sparrow's got kind of a what I would call a plain face. It's got a plain breast without any streaking. It's got a little rufous coloring in the head. And then it's got this kind of diagnostic small white eye ring as a field mark that helps separate it from some of the other sparrows. But yeah, these little slick, slick that we're hearing, those are Henslow's sparrows I was describing to the audience here. So they like to crawl under the grass, right, and rarely come up. It seems like you have to find a sweet spot. You can't have a prairie that was just burned, but you can't have one that was maybe burned 10 years ago either.
They're a tall grass prairie bird, but they make their nests. They need like unburned, like they call it a litter layer, but unburned grass from previous years. And they actually make their nest and they weave it in the grass a little bit off the ground even sometimes.
A technique you can put out to varying degrees of success while you're birding is something called pishing. It's like saying the word fish but with a P instead of an F. So pish, pish, pish. And some birds are really responsive to that in the right conditions. Others, you could do it all day and, you know, they wouldn't come any closer. But that common yellowthroat, sometimes you can pish them up, kind of agitate them a little bit with that, get them to come a little closer, kind of investigate what's going on. I'll give it a little crack here, but I'm not too hopeful on like today's weather. But psh, 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 psh. Psh, 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 psh. That's it singing right there, the witchety witchety. Psh, 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 psh. And so I don't know if you caught that on the video, but a bird just did come a little closer. It looks like it's some type of sparrow maybe? It dove down into the bushes there. Almost looked like song sparrow. Did you get a glimpse of that? So it wasn't exactly the bird we were hoping to pitch in, but you know, it was something. And in flight, it kind of looked like a song sparrow. I probably won't mark it down because I'm not 100% confident in it, but it seemed like it was a little longer body, a little longer kind of rusty colored or tinged tail, which is characteristic for song sparrows. Okay, now I can see the common yellowthroat. It popped up on a little stick here. It's kind of like in this direction. It was back in there. It popped up for a second. I could see its really bright yellow coloring, but it must have went back down or turned its back on us. I'm excited about the Henslow sparrows though. That's not every year you get them. I think at least. Yeah, the birds that sound like prehistoric, you know. I mean, nobody knows what a pterodactyl sounds like, but that's what people say, you know, like giant sandhill cranes probably back across the, you know, on the other side of the woods there out in the open farm field or what have you. All right, we'll keep walking. In McFarland, this particular parcel can actually be very birdy on the right day. Like I've had some great days where I just come out here and like we were talking before, the sun is kind of shining, the bugs are going. And the fall can be just as good as the spring. The birds, a lot of the warblers lose their, you know, flare of color and get kind of dulled down. Some don't, some keep it, but in the fall migration it can be just as good as the spring, and that'll, for warblers, really start late August through late September. Okay. Now we're hearing another common yellowthroat, I think, up in the oak here. Just that. Boy, it seems like we're right on top of it, but the cloudy weather, it's definitely harder to pick out the birds against the sky. You gotta look for motion. Warblers are usually moving around quite a bit, so you can, that's the blessing and the curse. You can catch the motion with your peripheral vision, which is very sharp for humans, and then kind of zero in on where the bird is. But then the downside is, well, the birds hop around all the time. It's hard to get focused or take a picture or something like that. This guy's just up here singing away. All right, I think this time the common yellowthroat wins. Keep moving.
Are most bird calls for mating purposes?
Yeah, I'd say mating and territorial defense, which I guess you could say is a part of mating. And it's funny, even in the fall migration, you'll hear birds still singing occasionally. I think it's because their hormones, right, are pumped up a lot to get the energy to, you know, make these long distance migrations, and the wires get a little crossed and they'll start singing again. It's, at that point, it's not truly for breeding purposes. It's just kind of, you know, a side effect of what they're going through for migration.
Most of the hormone generation is triggered by changes in day length. So as the days get longer, different hormones are produced, and it causes different behaviors. Could be testosterone, so it could be, you know, mating behavior, or it could be for migration too. They've done lots of experiments with birds in captivity and changing day lengths and stuff, and even in a sort of a controlled setting, they can trigger like migratory behavior, or the birds will start orienting generally at night in the way that they would normally migrate, so they can sense like electromagnetic fields for migration and stuff. So pretty crazy.
So we've got a couple pairs of tree swallows that are flying along. they'll use bluebird boxes to nest, which we see over there. And I'm guessing they're fighting it out over who's gonna get that box. They'll also use woodpecker cavities or tree cavities to nest in. They're real iridescent blue on top, and then they're white underneath, and then they have a little bit of a forked tail, you know, for a swallow, but not a real long fork like a barn swallow will have. I'll try and get a picture of one of these tree swallows since he's sitting still. Yeah, tree swallow, obviously a migratory bird. Pretty much no bird that relies on insects for eating is going to be able to stay here in the winter because all our insects are gone and dead for the most part, outside of some little snow fleas or whatever that you see from time to time. But yeah, so like the swallow family definitely relies, you know, almost 100% on insects. So they're out of here once the weather really turns cold in the fall.
They migrate in the seasons, but how long do they actually live for?
Oh, that's an Andy question. Andy, we have a question. How long do birds actually live for? There's a big span, right? From a couple of years to decades, I think, for some of the, I don't know about in this, you know, this climate here, but some of the parrots and macaws in the tropics, I think can live like 70 years, can't they? Like a long time.
There's that really famous albatross, yeah, in the Midway Islands. That's
Back every year,
80,
like, yeah,
she's
80 something years old.
And she still has chicks every year. So
They banded her a long time ago with like a leg band, so they just keep track every year she comes back.
she's carrying nesting material, like cardinals building a nest somewhere close by.
Looks like we got a bunch of birds up here. Let's see if there's anything interesting. Saw some birds diving in that brush pile. Now they all disappeared.
Shawn, there's a bunch of white-throated sparrows
Okay.
singing "Oh Sweet Geneva."
Oh, I hear a little tiny bird, even smaller than a warbler, called a blue-gray gnatcatcher, kind of making a little kind of sound up in this oak. Appropriately named, kind of shades of blue and gray. It's got black with white outer tail feathers. Bug-eating bird.
Goldfinch.
There was a goldfinch that just flew from tree to tree. He's making that buzzy kind of chirping sounds. And he's trying to pish up the white-throated sparrows we're hearing. So one of them jumped in the tree way up there. Yep. Gnatcatcher kind of disappeared on us, but
There's counting yellowtail. It's teed up.
oh man, we just missed it. He's in that line of green bushes over there somewhere. Here comes the yellow warbler, responding to the pishing. He just jumped in this tree here. Sounded like a male, yeah. It's got faint kind of rusty red stripes down the breast, so that's a male yellow warbler, probably defending his territory here. So what just happened for me there when I was looking at the bird, very common when you go birding. You almost never get these super clean looks at birds. They're always, head's a little obstructed by a branch or a leaf, or they're moving around. So, you know, it's a challenge just to find the right characteristics to identify the bird, but that's part of the fun too. Yeah, he was on that oak over there, and I didn't see him move at all. Oh, that's an eastern towhee that just made that sound, which I guess the mnemonic is drink your tea, some people say. It's I guess part of the sparrow family. It's a really large, kind of oversized sparrow. That's a good bird to get a photo of. It's black on top, rusty orange like a robin down the sides. Got white outer tail feathers. Kind of likes to hang out in dark places. It's a migrant bird. It's probably the best bird we've seen today. Well, other than hearing the Henslow sparrows. And I don't know if everyone's perceiving it the way I am here, but it is much birdier on this side, out of the wind. We've got birds over here that aren't getting a lot of wind, singing and moving around. We've had sparrows, towhees. Oh, you heard red start? Okay. See if we can catch up with that towhee, but. There's the towhee. He's way up in this oak tree. There he is singing. Really nice obstructed photo of his belly. Okay, I think we caught up to our gnatcatcher. That kind of looks like him in about the 10 o'clock position. Nope, it's a warbler. It's a orange crown warbler, Andy? Or is it a palm? I can't get a good look at him. I thought I just heard yellow-throated vireo too. Did you pick up the 3A? Like somewhere in the back of the woods?
The Nashville warbler.
Okay.
And there's the palm warbler.
Yep.
And there was a thrush that went right past you, but you weren't looking. Too busy with this towhee.
Mm-hmm. Towhee's pretty high up there for a towhee. Let's see if he'll get him.
Oh yeah. I guess you're the white-throated swan, so it's like...
They say that's the song of the North Woods in Wisconsin. They'll eventually mostly migrate up there and places further north, and they like to hang out in deep, dark spots and sing that song and move around the forest floor. Goldfinch, palm warbler.
I did hear your
Yeah, he's over here. I think he's in that tree line. It's a yellow-throated vireo that's singing a kind of a warbler-like bird, but vireos are their own families. They have a little bit more blunt bills, and if you zoom in, they got a little hook on the end of the top of the bill for ripping apart caterpillars and whatever else they find. But they hop around, to me, a little bit slower cadence than like a warbler. Not quite as flitty, but they still move around quite a bit in the trees looking for bugs. Yeah, we should have started over here. A lot birdier. This is Chickadee. I'm hearing lots of palm warblers, which is one of the early warblers with yellow rump that comes early. Yeah, I can hear it singing. So we're hearing an American redstart sing, which is a type of warbler. It's the males have really neat coloration. They're black with a little bit of orange, so they really stand out if you can find one. And they'll be a resident bird here in the McFarland area, this part of Wisconsin. They have a wide latitude of where they breed. Yeah, now that we're on, I guess, what you'd call like the leeward side, the non-windy side, there are definitely more birds in these trees hopping around, warblers, sparrows, gnatcatchers. Big woodpecker drumming somewhere. The sound of the drumming can be deceptive. It could be a bigger woodpecker, like a flicker or a red-bellied, or even a pileated, although we don't see a lot in McFarland. But the sound of the drumming can be indicative of like the condition of the wood too. If it's a really hollow, kind of rotted out piece of wood, it can sound loud and it might still be a very small woodpecker banging on it. So we're hearing a red-bellied woodpecker, kind of in the direction where that drumming was coming from. Here goes the wood ducks right here. Yeah, I don't know if you can get the lower Mud Lake in your shots here, but this is a intersection of some pretty neat habitats where we are. You know, we've got an oak wood lot, we've got a prairie, we've got the lake down there and the marshy kind of habitat. So even like those wood ducks, you see a lot of birds just kind of crossing over between habitats. There's a wood duck flying around again. Appropriately named, they actually will use tree cavities, like hollowed out tree cavities, like where an owl would be. They'll use those to lay their eggs in and nest. So this time of year, if you go out hiking enough, you'll eventually bump into a pair of ducks, up in a tree, which seems really weird for ducks, but that's usually wood ducks up there looking at a place to nest.
What could be up in that nest up there?
That's probably a squirrel's nest, given the size of like the nest, and they use a lot of leaves, I think, in their nest. Squirrels do. Although, like owls don't typically build their own nest, so like an owl could reuse that nest, like a great horned owl, in the winter. Now, great horned owls have kind of probably already come and gone for nesting. They lay their eggs in like February, and their chicks hatch, late March, early April, and they're usually out of their nests by now. So. And there's probably an evolutionary reason for that. A lot of times owls will reuse like hawk nests and stuff, and they're trying to, they don't think like this, but they end up getting in and getting out of there before like the osprey or the hawk or something will come back from migration. So works out well for everybody.
So there's a nest box over there? So what would you find in there?
Yeah, so that style of nest box is pretty common. People put them out for bluebirds, but the tree swallows we saw before will also use them. Unfortunately, and there goes a tree swallow right now. Unfortunately, the invasive house sparrows that we all have around our house, the little brown birds with kind of the black on them, they're technically not even a sparrow, but if they are close to these, they will try and take these over and use these as well. The good news is you don't really find house sparrows out in the wild. They kind of have to be close to a house or a subdivision or community or something. So if you get these far enough out in the prairies and stuff, then you don't have to worry about that. But if you put one and there's some houses around, yeah, the house sparrows will come over and try and use it, and it's very difficult to get rid of them. I don't manage any bluebird boxes, but I know a couple people that do, and I have to go in there and try and catch them or get rid of them by other means to get them out of there so that the bluebirds can use them, because they will actually if the bluebirds start nesting in there, the house sparrows will go in and kind of peck them to death and just kill them inside the boxes, and then just build their own nest right on top of them. They're just brutal. I think bluebird numbers had plummeted, throughout the decades, so there really was a conscientious effort from a lot of conservation groups to go out and build these houses, put them in appropriate habitats, and then maintain them and count the numbers and stuff like that. And I guess populations have slowly been going back up, a couple percent a year for bluebirds, right, for a couple decades now.
There's 2 catbirds in that black cherry outfit.
Okay. These are gray catbirds, a migrant bird that, well, it does make a cat-like mew sound, but they make a whole bunch of different mimics and calls and whistles and stuff like that. So they're, a lot of times if you hear a bird in a brush pile or a little thicket, and you could sit there for 20 minutes like, what is that? What's going on? A lot of times it's just a catbird really buried in there doing all these weird calls. Well, you were in the woods, Andy. I had a little M-head flycatcher bopping around the tops of the trees. It didn't strike me as a least. I didn't see an eye ring, but it just was too dark up there to get a good look at it, and I eventually lost it.
I heard one least last week.
Okay. I've been hearing them all over, but I can't
When I
find
ducked
any.
into the woods, there's probably 15 white-throated sparrows and
Okay.
ruby crowned kinglets.
Oh, still some kinglets. Okay. Nice.
Some warblers.
Okay.
Red start coming in the head.
Yeah, I was at the Arboretum last Friday and then again this weekend. There was the dandelion fields kind of going up to the pine tim up there. There was 100+ white-throated sparrows working those dandelions just right out in the open. Nothing rare popped up. I was hoping for something a little different, but a few white crowns, yeah, Harris's, or who knows, maybe even a golden crown or something. I mean, there was just hordes of white-throated sparrows around. Now, the last couple of days, they seem to have dissipated. At Lake Farm, too, there was just a bunch in those, by those shelters. They got all the dandelions there. Yesterday was kind of dead, though. Another field sparrow up ahead. A couple starlings flying by, another invasive species. There was a house wren that popped in over here. Oh, was that a least flycatcher right there? Chibunk?
Song sparrow.
White-throated sparrow on the trail. Nope, song sparrow on the trail. Yeah, I think I'm catching a little least flycatcher over there. Just a little chibunk call like from some of the scrub. Oh. Nice looking yellow warbler low in this tree. Got a photo of him. Okay, we got him, I think. It's tough with the birds because they're moving and you're moving. And of course you gotta be mindful of the ethics too, like a little bird like that's fine with me walking around taking pictures of it. But if there was a nesting bird, you don't want to get too close and really disrupt their nesting process there. So it's a balance.
Okay, so I have a robin that just built a nest on my porch.
Yeah?
Yeah, so far I've been peeking when it's not around. I'm sure it is around, but it has 2 eggs in there.
Cool. Little blue ones, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there anything I should do about that to be courteous? I like to use my porch, but it's right there.
I think it's fine. I had one build one under my canoe one year that I couldn't use, have the canoe upside down. And so I built one on top of one of the seats. So I had to wait 3 or 4 weeks until it got the nestlings out of there before I used the canoe. And then some birds will breed multiple times during the season, so then it started going back and building a new nest in there, and then that time I just grabbed the nest and threw it out of there before it laid eggs. or else there's gonna be no canoeing for me the whole summer. Yeah, Andy spotted a sandhill crane on the edge of the prairie down there where it's kind of turned into wetland habitat. Good.
We have colts right now.
Yeah, I saw one yesterday. So see that green shrub, that tall green shrub is just in the lower left corner, like the 7 o'clock position. Way down there. This is a great area for sandhill cranes with the lake and the prairies and stuff. They're always flying over in the spring. So even like a habitat within a habitat, like this row of spruce and pine around here can hold different birds. You know, you'll hear more finches up there, goldfinches, house finches. In the winter we had pine siskins. There's probably still a few around here. The owls like to hide in the pines and spruces during the day so that they're not seen by crows and blue jays, because if an owl's out in the open, this is many times how you'll find them during the day, the crows will just zero right in on them and start harassing them and mobbing them and going after them. But there's several years I've run into nesting great horned owls kind of in these pine trees with chicks. I didn't find them this year, but I've heard the owls. I just didn't bump into the nest anywhere. There's a little chickadee on top of the nest box. He's not going to nest in there, but he's just using it as a perch right now.
Is he nesting in this box here?
I don't know. He is kind of protecting it. I just said on video, he's not going to nest in there, but I guess you can't rule it out. It's a cavity.
You'd think it's a little more out in the open than they like, but
Yeah.
it's acting like he's...
I've had a chickadee at home tapping on my window all winter. Now, finally stopped about a week ago, right above my bed.
Sure.
Comes in and I think he sees himself in the reflection. He just taps, he kind of spreads his wings and taps his beak. And he's nesting in a little bird box like about 20 yards away. And so he just keeps hitting all our windows really aggressively. Oh, I guess they are nesting in there. Cool.
They're in there.
Cool. I don't hear any little chicks in there, but it's probably getting pretty soon.
They're on eggs still.
Yeah.
There's one in one of your boxes in Indian Mound too.
Is there?
Right on the trail.
Oh, great. Which trail? The cross trail?
The lower one.
The lower trail.
The bottom trail.
Okay, we'll have to go check that out. Awesome.
If you're interested in learning more about birding, the Locke Public Library has books, videos, and audio resources that you can check out for free. In Charles Hanger's Field Guide to Birds of Wisconsin, you'll be able to learn more about all the species of birds that you saw on today's walk, as well as Wisconsin's many other bird inhabitants. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's bird walk.
I remember being a kid, going to my cabin in northern Wisconsin and hearing this really weird bird, and then going to the library and checking out the record, like the album.
Oh, cool.
Of bird songs.
Oh, cool.
Imagine going through every bird song in like an album.
Oh, rewind.
Like
Pick
an
up the
hour
needle.
Later, I'm like, oh, that's what it was.
That's funny.
It's a veery.
Oh.
So I call it the video game bird.
Okay.
It sounded like Pac-Man when you lose at Pac-Man.
Oh, that's funny.